remind about these off meetings because people get mixed up.
No, all the districts
Okay.
want to avoid that.
There. Thank you, everyone. Let's see, welcome to our September board meeting. It is Thursday, September 7th at 6:36 p.m. We will begin by introducing board members, starting over here.
Jim Lothridge.
Diane Potter,
Alyssa Tracy,
Laura Henderson,
Megan Carlson,
Becky Fless,
Tony Veet.
Molly Rogers,
Jack Bitteroff.
administrative staff.
Pat Hopkins, Superintendent,
Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum.
Terry McGuire, Director of Technology.
Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment for items on or off the agenda? Seeing none. Review and approval of agenda minutes, prioritization of items, and alteration of the established agenda format sequence as needed.
Yes, I just have an addition on page 2 at the end of general information. If you could add an F, and that would be district advisory positions. That would include Rayanne DeSoto for the REACH program, Elise Osterman for the library, and Nora Diversey as the nurse. So these are stipend positions to help oversee those programs.
Mine's already got it.
The public hasn't, this hasn't been posted, but you have it.
You're right.
Okay. May I have please a motion to approve the agenda as adjusted? Motion by Diane,
Second.
second by Tony. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes of previous meetings, regular school board meeting of August 17th, 2023, and our special board meeting, a reentry hearing on August 29th, 2023. Motion to approve
Motion to approve.
from Alyssa,
Second.
second from Jim. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Perfect. Thank you. No recognitions and celebrations. Correspondence as written.
Just as written.
Committee reports.
No, they'll be starting.
Yeah, none.
I guess the only one would be if Aura wants to just share a little bit about the first few days of school. Oh, you didn't hear me? Yeah. Do you want to just share?
Yeah, I'd love to. So it's pretty early in the year, but I talked to a couple of students about their goals for this year. I got answers like some students want to step out of their comfort zone and join new clubs. Some students would like to pass all their classes this year.
Crazy.
Some students would like to make new friends, try their best in everything they do, getting their permits, winning their games. It's really fresh, so many people are thinking about what their goals are for the school year still. So many seniors were thinking about applying for college and applying for scholarships. And a couple of students said they'd like to make sure that school becomes a safe place for everyone this year and to really run with that. But overall, everyone's looking forward to what's to come this year with lots of new changes. Everyone's interested. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Hope Field Committee, we have not met, so nothing.
Nothing, the wall should be constructed. I haven't been down to be able to see it, but it should be constructed at this point. It was later than we had intended. The weather, again, this summer, I know I've said this before, but the weather put us behind schedule. As soon as we can have those bricks and plaques up, we will have them installed.
Excellent. General information as written.
Just as written.
Excellent. Nominations.
Yes, we have 2 nominations. We have Richard Boulay as the new music teacher at Gardner Regional Middle School. He comes to us with lots of experience. We're excited to have him. And Catherine Roberts, also equally excited to have Catherine. And she has an interesting background that we're just can't wait to learn more from her. And so she's also going to be at the middle school as an English language arts teacher.
Excellent. And so we need to vote on these.
Yes.
So I'd like a motion from somewhere in the room to accept these 2 new hires.
I move we accept these new hires.
Thank you, Jack. And second by Molly. Questions or comments? All those in favor? If you're watching, welcome aboard. New business. Yes, Jim.
So,
Real quick question, I'd like to back up to one thing about the correspondence. 2 things, actually. This seems like we have more resignations this year than we've had in past years this time of year.
last couple years,
Okay.
we've seen a lot more resignations at the end of summer than we previously saw. And speaking with colleagues, they're seeing the same thing. So, yeah.
So this, I'm assuming this new hire, hopefully the English language arts teacher will be sliding into that slot. That
Yes.
super.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jim. New business.
So a review of the start of the school year, including an update on current staffing. So why don't we start with the current staffing? Since you were asking.
Perfect segue.
So, yeah, we still have openings. More openings than I've seen in my tenure. And again, I'm hearing this from my colleagues. We hear about it on the news. It's a statewide issue. It's a nationwide issue. So as of right now, we have over at the Helen Thompson School, we have 2 ed tech openings in the autism program, in ed tech 1 and ed tech 2, and we just have a district ed tech 1 position open. At the Laura E. Richards School, we have a Title I literacy position, which is an ed tech 3 position that's still open. At Pittston Randolph, we have 2 special ed tech 1 positions open. At Riverview, and it's Riverview, Pittston Randolph, we have a Title I math interventionist, which is an ed tech 3 position. At the middle school, we still have a special ed teacher position open, resource room, and we have an ed tech 1 in special ed. The high school, we have a special ed teacher in the behavioral program that is still vacant. In adult ed, they're struggling to hire an administrative assistant during the day. We also have another bus driver position open. We have instructional coach for math in elementary schools. We have our board certified behavior analyst, and we have the business office generalist. So that's a lot of positions that we haven't been able to fill. Despite that, the staff have been incredibly creative in finding ways of still ensuring we're meeting the needs of the students. We do have some Ed Tech 3. Again, to be an Ed Tech 3, you need to have at least 90 credit hours. And we have some Ed Tech 3s that have agreed to kind of step up and do some instruction under the supervision of another teacher. We have some teachers sharing caseloads as a way of helping cover. They're just doing the best they can. And so far, it's working. Our overall enrollment numbers are down. I don't know if you saw in your packet more enrollment numbers. However, we have seen an increase in some of our special services needs. I want to let you know something that you're probably aware, I think most of you are aware of what's called a superintendent's agreement, right? Where you have families who live outside of our school district, and if they want their children to attend here, for legitimate reasons, I can approve that or deny it. And majority of the time I will approve. At this point, I have had to deny some. Any family who has a child requiring special services, I've had to deny because we're not able to meet the needs of the students that we currently have. So I hate having to do that, but law really defines, some of our responsibilities, and we are limited with the number of students that our teachers can case manage for and their points of contact. So I hate to be in that position. There were a lot of really compelling cases that I still had to deny because of that. So in addition to those needs and those challenges, we heard Sarah Bolduc-Ignaziak tell us today, I think we had 4 students come in that were in an out-of-district placement or are currently in out-of-district placement that we hadn't planned on. So 4.
That just arrived at school on the
Yeah.
day of.
They've arrived. One was maybe a foster student who's now being adopted. So you go from foster care and the state paying for it, and now we will need to pay for it. So keep in mind that each out-of-district placement runs about $100,000. So if we have 4 that we hadn't anticipated, there's definitely a cost associated with that. So we're managing that. Overall, the start of the school year has been a positive one. Despite this heat wave, which has been a real challenge for students and staff, and bus drivers. Those buses are darn hot. And for them to be on the bus for 2 straight hours in that heat, it's been brutal. But separate from this particular issue, what I'm hearing from administrators, they've been really positive. Things are going well. Certainly there are issues, of course, but it's been a strong start to the school year. People are feeling optimistic, pretty positive. So we're looking forward to a very successful school year. Angela, anything that you could add to that? Not to put you on the spot, I just didn't know if I missed anything.
I'm running through the little Rolodex in my head. No, I think you did a nice job encapsulating it.
Jim?
How are we handling the autism program? You said we're missing 2 ed techs. That's a pretty significant issue.
Yeah, what Alicia has had to do is she has had to reassign ed techs from like the resource room and other programs, and she's had to put them in the autism program.
Okay, so we're giving them the services that by law we have to give them. And we want to give them.
Correct.
Okay.
But it does create a challenge in the program that they're not in. But the needs of those students are still being met.
Are we not, is it just there are no bodies available, or are we not competitive enough services, benefits wise and salary wise?
It's a great question. I'm hearing that there are other schools. Angela actually mentioned another school today that they have 20 vacancies in their school. So I don't think that it is uncommon. However, some of the private schools and institutions are able to offer significant sign-on bonuses, and they can more readily adjust their salary scale than we can. And so they are seeing a higher number of candidates apply for their positions than we are, but.
Going back
Okay.
to one question. You said that Alicia's reassigning, is it coming from others,
Yes.
from other elementary schools to fill in? Like, is it creating holes in schools?
Yeah, she has to move them from other buildings.
Okay.
So if you had a resource room ed tech right now, you may not have a resource room ed tech. She just has to prioritize.
And is it essentially temporary, and if we were to fill the position?
Correct. Correct. They're trying, you're welcome. They're being as creative as they're able to be.
Another duty assigned.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So,
And then Ed Tech 3 you said was 90.
and you need at least 90 credit hours. So to be an Ed Tech 1, all you need is a high school diploma. To be an Ed Tech 2, you need to have 60 credit hours. And to be an Ed Tech 3, you need 90 credit hours. And again, you know, the salary, the pay, the hourly rate may not be as high as, I don't know, McDonald's, I don't know what they're paying. But we have incredible insurance, right? And the insurance is for 12 months, even though the job is for 181 days. So there's a sizable benefit that comes with the position. And we're just a great place to work, right? It's a good school district, great people to work with.
Yep. it's
We've got a
great
lot
place.
of new families in town, so maybe there's somebody watching who just happens to have an unfinished degree with 90 credit hours who wants to be in it.
That would be great. Love to have them.
You know, UMA has an education major and a lot of their classes can be done asynchronous. So in theory, some of these students would be available during the day.
That's right, that's right.
We should put up flyers.
Right.
Just be like, hey, you wanna pay for college?
We put this on Facebook. Periodically, we try to send out, right, the mass notices, realizing that there are individuals who are not going to go to our website to look for jobs, but if they see it, it might spark interest.
I think Jack's onto something though, because I get like weekly UMA job postings, news about jobs, and I don't think it would hurt to say, hey, UMA education majors, if anybody's looking for a job, our district needs ed techs.
And or substitutes.
Yeah, that too.
And or substitutes.
Yeah, for sure.
And or bus drivers.
Bus driver, who knows?
Bus driver takes a little more training.
It does.
They have to
Yeah,
have
it
their
does.
CDL, but
Yeah. But again, we're a great place to work.
yeah, I think so.
It's fun. Excellent, thank you. Let's see, district goals.
All right, Angela is going to present those tonight.
Turning the wrong way. Somebody must have vacuumed and moved it or something.
Put your, share your screen from Zoom.
Is that not what I'm doing?
It doesn't, you're on, hang on 1 second, give me 1 second, all right?
Yeah. I didn't do it through airtime.
Hang on.
Share via editing.
Sure. So stop share on this.
So while they're working on that,
Mhm.
why don't I do my report? Great idea. It's short. It's not very long. Since we just talked about opening the start of school. I did want to remind you once again that we will not be having a board meeting the night of Thursday, October 5th. That meeting will be Thursday, October 12th instead. On the 5th, from 6 to 7:30, we have Lynn Lyons, who is going to be at the high school in the Little Theater doing a presentation regarding anxiety in students and how to help them cope or, right, how help students cope with anxiety. And just to give parents, community members, interested people tips on how to help address those things. So really important for board members who are able to attend.
Where did you say?
In the Little Theater at the high school at 6:00.
And
And Yep.
that is all school ages.
yes,
Correct.
yes.
Yeah, she'll actually speak about all ages. So if you have a family member who's an adult who's struggling with anxiety, you'll also learn something.
And Angela is currently working with the Boys and Girls Club to provide childcare for families who wish to go and need childcare. More information will be presented. I have a newsletter that will be going out shortly. Kind of a new goal of mine is to try to regularly send out a newsletter from the central office, and there will be information on that newsletter regarding that. The other thing is just to make sure, bring to your attention that the negotiations team will be meeting next week with school's attorney to begin the food service negotiations process. Their contract expired in June, so they're now ready to negotiate. So just so you know, that will be going on.
It has expired or
Yes.
it's going to?
It
No, it
did
has.
It did,
expire, yeah. But that's all of that I have for my report, but it looks like you're ready.
I'm ready.
Excuse me.
I thought it was a computer.
Me too.
Okay, so what I'm going to share with you is the result of work that we do every year in June with our staff across every building. They analyze our spring assessment results, try to understand what our profile looks like in terms of learners, groups of learners, so whole grade levels year over year, in terms of their growth and their achievement, and relation to attendance. And then in the summer, and I share that with the board, and I share it through the curriculum committee, and we live stream it, and we do all that. And in the summer, the administrative team comes together, and then through that ongoing data analysis and our long-term goals, we set annual goals for the district. And then the schools work with their teams. There's a team at every school, inclusive of teachers and other staff members, who then say, okay, based on our data within our building and the district goal, what do we need to do to achieve that, right? And then they make up their own action plans. So this is an annual recurring process. And so what I'm sharing with you today, sort of the focus that we'll be having this year around our sort of professional learning to support our goals, that the actual goals that we've set for this year as a trajectory towards the long-term goals. And then I actually want to draw in the strategic planning process so that you can see where we're at and how we'd like to move forward, knowing that, you know, you need to play an instrumental role in that. What I'm going to share is also something we shared with all our staff on opening day. So I thought maybe it would be best for you to see the same thing for the most part. So this had greater context, but generally speaking, this year, what we really want to lean into is continuing to cultivate healthy learning communities. And what does that mean, right? Social, emotional, and academic health for all of our learners and staff, and continue to foster academic and social growth. Achievement is imperative, but it's the growth that will get us to that achievement. So really looking at how are we growing as learners. And in our healthy communities, we will do this in a few different ways. Pat just discussed having Lynn Lyons coming in. She's an expert, a psychotherapist and an expert on anxiety. And we received a grant through the United Way to fund this in partnership with Healthy Communities of the Capital Area and Boys and Girls Club. So that work will launch on October 5th and 6th with the full staff and intensive training, and then an ongoing way through her. She's a published author, and so we'll use her work and connections virtually with her to continue the conversation and learning throughout the year. We will also be focusing at the secondary level specifically, and in some ways across the whole district, on civil discourse in school and classroom communities, and then of course challenging bias and harassment in schools. And there's many ways we're going to get into that, and I'll be discussing that at Tuesday's curriculum committee meeting. So if you'd like to join us at 3:30 to learn more details about the professional learning plan, please do come. And if you can't join us, feel free to watch the video afterwards. But also to continue to cultivate healthy communities, we will continue to nurture our relationships with community groups and partners. Because as you know, the schools can't do it all. And the more we work collaboratively with other partners, the more that we can provide those wraparound services and supports for families and learners. Inside and outside the school community. So we'll spend a lot of time on that this year. So on the fostering academic growth side, to monitor our progress, we have 3 distinct goals as a district, which is typical of our work annually. And we do focus those goals right now in math, literacy, and attendance. Attendance because we need students to be present, actively engaged in order to learn. Math and literacy because that's where the most accountability is in the testing. And honestly, for literacy, it's a gatekeeper, right? Students can read, they can access much more broadly. If they can't, they're very limited in all other domains and exercises related to educational use. So I'll start with absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is a term that's defined at the state level. It means that there's a 10% absence rate, and that equates to 18 days of excused and unexcused absences in a year. So there is a difference between being truant, which is focused on unexcused absences that are consistent and long-term, and being chronically absent, which is an accumulation of a number of days that do include excused absences like illness or planned family vacations and unexcused absences. The state does track chronic absenteeism, and it's reported in our accountability system on the data dashboard at the Maine Department of Ed website. And so our goal for this coming year is to reduce our chronic absenteeism rate as a district from 23.2% of our students being chronically absent to 15%. The long-term goal and what the state expects is 10%. So last year we were at 29%. And then by the end of the year, we were at 23% as a district. So each school varies a little, right? But as an average. And so our goal is to cut that down in 1 year to 15% and then to continue to pursue that. This is where the building action plans are really important, because we know a lot of this is reliant upon relationships with families and having that continued ongoing conversation, helping figure out what kind of supports are necessary to enable the children to come to school. So each building will look at their particular chronic absentee rate, which is either a little higher, or a little lower than 23%, and set some action plans and goals, action steps to achieve their goal.
Do we have an idea what's driving the absenteeism rate being so high? Is it still
Yeah,
COVID
so
or?
the last couple of years, COVID definitely played a role, right? Because students were out for 5 days at a time if they were sick. And we still had, even last year, a fair amount. And at the beginning of this year, there's a little bit happening. So that will play a role. If they get COVID 2 times in 1 year, that's 10 days, right? Out of 18, that's a significant
lucky.
portion of them, right? And so that is one factor. And then there are some unique dynamics going on in family groups that for reasons that are shared usually between the building principal and the family that make it challenging. And some students, sometimes it's a family dynamic issue, sometimes it's a maybe the student's not really interested and engaged in school, and so we have to kind of work on a plan to shift that.
And anxiety.
Yes, and we know our anxiety rate is rising. That's documented through our 504s, our IEP meetings, and conversations. Yeah, so that's actually why the Lynn Lyons work is going to be so important, because it's our natural inclination a lot of times to when dealing with anxiety to use avoidance strategies, right? I am anxious, this thing makes me anxious, this experience makes me anxious, I will avoid it, right? Totally natural reaction. And for a very limited period of time, that's probably okay. But what the research is saying is that the more you do that, the more comfortable you become in those more isolated spaces and reduce your opportunity for learning how to engage and work through those moments of anxiety so that you can be productive and engaged and part of a community. And a school is a really great place to practice those if we're aware of what's the trigger, how can we help and provide support, and how can we proactively put measures in place to enable like ongoing engagement and then gradual release so that those are independent strategies for the learner as opposed to strategies that we're really providing for the learner until they learn them, right? So her work is about how to proactively lean into identifying what is a cause of anxiety and how to pursue and work through that rather than avoid it.
Is there any research on what the students are anxious about? Is there something that's a triggering mechanism that is there?
So I think we'll learn a lot from Lynn. I haven't read all her books or anything yet.
So she has done the research.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what we hear is, uncomfortable social interactions, a challenge with reading or being perceived with body language, being read or perceived by others. Some of the online experiences students are having translating into in-person situations, trying to figure out how to do that. But there's lots of other reasons too, and every person is a little different, but I'd rather have someone who researched it speak about it than me. So I think that our engagement with this person would be really helpful for us.
I'd say definitely, for sure, you hit on something though. The young kids, like my young kids, they do have anxiety about going to school and about not feeling well. So if they don't feel well, they think they're supposed to stay home from school, and it is so hard to get them to understand that they're not sick with something, they're just tired or they're just whatever, but they are so conditioned to, oh my goodness, I feel sick or I don't feel well, so I shouldn't be around other people. And then they spend so much time, like, yeah, they're more comfortable, like, just not. My kids in particular, they're just
or, oh no, am I gonna have to miss 5 more days of school?
Right, exactly. They're like, yeah, I
Stomach
can't go.
Yeah.
But I don't blame them. We just told them they couldn't go to school if they
Right.
weren't well, so.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's why the situation around COVID has created some probably mixed messaging over time that we're not used to, and we have to kind of work through that.
Yeah.
And we are spending a lot of time around like academic talk, what we call discourse, or just basically conversations with one another around academic situations. And even that requires real thought and care into how you enter those so that students' ideas are heard and valued, understood, and then if there's a misconception, there's a way to help that student understand the misconception without any sort of blame or shame. Those are all things that our field has gotten better at over the years and are working really hard at practicing. But you know, we had a year and a half isolated learning, and we're all trying to
Figure it out, yeah.
So that's our chronic absenteeism goal. And we'll talk about that again because later, you know, in June, we'll have a better sense of what our chronic absenteeism rate is and how we got close to that or not, what were the strategies we found successful and which ones weren't. So our math goal is differentiated based upon the data that we have. So this is where it's really clear we're starting to look at closely at our data. Our long-term goal is always 80%. I mean, ideally it'd be 100%, but our long-term goal is to get to that 80% threshold. So in grades K through 5 on average, we really expect to get students to 65% of our students to a level of proficiency. And the tool we're using is the iReady Math Diagnostic. It's a more game-based, it is a standardized testing tool, but it's a little bit more game-based, a little shorter, a little more engaging for students. So we use that one. The reports for teachers are much more user-friendly, so it's valuable, the data's valuable. And then in our secondary grades, we're looking at a 50% rate. And so, to be honest, because we've had more years where we haven't been as successful with those particular cohorts, we needed to set the bar at a place that's a reasonable achievement and demonstrates growth. It is in alignment with kind of where the state sets the bar on our state standardized tests. Our state standardized test for what is proficient is a little bit lower for the secondary levels than it is for the elementary levels, probably because the whole state is that way too. So we're not out of skew, just to be clear. We just are trying to set realistic expectations, and where we can exceed, we're going to. So that's why K5 is at 65, 610 is at 50, and over time, we're gonna see that 610 number go up while the K5 number continues to go up. Does that make sense?
So where are we if we're trying to reach this?
Maybe you asked that. So, in our K, so I don't have the number right in front of me, so I'm gonna give you what I can recall as the estimate. But I know I gave the number specifically last spring during the curriculum committee meeting, so that would have been June and we could go look it up. And I have a slide deck on it. But our K5 average is somewhere around 49%, 45 to 49%, and our 610 average is closer to 35%.
And was there growth last year?
A lot of growth so I have a slide on that from June to 60% of our cohort is a whole grade level across the district, made growth, like continued growth from fall to spring. The ones who did not, with one exception, they were stable. So the bar changes as the year goes on, but the proficiency rate remains stable. So it doesn't mean that they didn't grow, it's they didn't grow enough in relation to that bar that kind of changes throughout the year to get to the end of your state standard statement. Does that make sense?
How, excuse me, how do these numbers compare to pre-COVID numbers? I know you don't have them exact, but
They're about the same as pre-COVID.
where we're at now is about the same as pre-COVID?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that we've implemented a lot of kind of a newly designed curriculum and instructional resources, but we did that actually amidst COVID, which is a little bit unheard of to implement in the middle of a health crisis. But we needed the instructional resources, we had done the research. It's as good a time as any to put something that's quality materials, and so we did. It's always a learning curve when you're trying to implement new stuff, so I actually think it's advantageous to us, because now that we're feeling like in a more normal state of being, we're getting much better at implementing the practices that need to be implemented, so I anticipate our growth is just going to continue to accelerate as a result.
Thank you. Good.
In literacy, our goal is different. In grades 1 through 10, we are looking for a 50% proficiency. That's meet or exceed. So we have students definitely exceeding, and we want to see their growth as well, right? We don't want them staying stagnant. We want them to continue to grow. And in our kindergarten, I am advocating for less use of NUIA in kindergarten. And so we use a tool called Early Bird Literacy Screener, and it's also our dyslexia screener in pre-K, K, and 1. It is a game-based technology coming out of the Boston Children's Hospital and their Center on Reading Research out of Florida. Students love it. And it's really well designed, and the subtests or the little games that each child plays through the sequence, the game board, provide data to the educator on each foundational skill, letter sounds, letter names, blending, vocabulary, and on and listening skills, and on and on. That all compile strong reading fluency over time, and a predictor for word reading, or in first grade word reading skills. So that's why you see a shift here, because I'd like that tool and it's nationally normed. And they have a pretty large pool of students, and it's well vetted. So I'd like to see us use the Early Bird Literacy Screener rather than NUIA, which I think we have used for, 18 years now in kindergarten. But I don't know that it's as developmentally engaging as Early Bird. And I think assessments, the more engaging they are, the more likely we're going to have valid data, right? The potential for word reading is a combination of 3 subtests, not all the subtests they take. So, and we're looking at an 80% proficiency, which I think is actually very achievable in kindergarten. If we can achieve, we were in the high 60s, low 70s this past year. If we can get to 80% in this, and then continue to grow in first grade, all of these numbers in 1st through 10 are going to increase, because most of the lower proficiency there we're finding is actually gaps in foundational literacy skills. And you miss those. If you miss those early, it's hard to get them later. Now we're changing our practices so we can start to catch those now in grades 3 through 8 a lot better than we ever used to. And so we'll be able to close those gaps and help those students as well. But really, if we can start in kindergarten with a much more predictable profile and response system, we can get those other numbers to go up, which really boils down to our kids will be reading, right? That's what matters more than all these numbers on the screen. And then, okay, any questions on that? Okay, so those are our 3 big goals. We do this annually. It's based on student data, and it's looking at trends over time, and then what's a measurable, achievable, attainable goal. As you know, all last year we had strategic plan listening sessions. We did that through those Zoom meetings, either in person, recorded in Zoom, or in your own living room or home, place in your home or business, connected in Zoom. And there are lots of questions. People sometimes were surprised. The questions often started with like, what do you consider a good life? Which was like, wait a minute, I thought we were coming in to talk about school, right? But schooling helps people become, adults in our society that are working and contributing to their communities. So that makes a really good start and an equalizer for our conversation so that all people can participate. And what we found across all of our stakeholder groups is there are a lot of shared values in this community, more so than in most communities. When I say community, I mean all 4 towns that serve our district. Most communities, when they do this, they actually find some pretty big discrepancies. And we were so surprised to learn that our community has a lot of shared values. And we may approach it and talk about it differently, but we do have a lot of shared values. And what we want for our learners is pretty consistent, and what we're proud of has a lot of overlap. So that's very exciting. I want to try to share a couple audio clips because we did that all last year with you, and I just think the more you ground it in the actual people that serve our communities, the more this the strategic plan that will result from this work will mean something to all of us, right? The trick with this is because I'm presenting in this way, it's gonna look funny. When I did it with staff, I had 2 computers and I could make it like super fancy so no one would see all the stuff behind the screen, but you're all gonna see all the mess. But just bear with me. And I don't actually remember
Paying attention to the man behind the curtain.
Shouldn't we see our educators as like the most noble members of our communities? I mean, I think we should.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the people teaching the nuts and bolts to our kids, for God's sakes, and what is more important to anybody than your kids?
Yeah, 100%.
So with our staff, we actually started with that. People really believe in you and they value you. And there's one example of that. And they value our children first and foremost, right? And we get to be guardians of these children for a few hours every day. So then we talked about what does that kind of really mean and look like?
Yeah, so absolutely to all of these things, listening to their interests. And I'm gonna say it, I think school needs to slow down a little bit. I think we need to slow down, put on the brakes and figure out what really matters. Yeah, and I know academics are absolutely important, but we can't teach academics until we have the trust of our students and that they're comfortable here. So for me, it's just about learning that, building relationships, building up our curriculum. So, and I think once students can develop that trust in teachers, that we're going to speak up for them and,
Sorry about the double thing going on.
Let's try it. Okay.
So then we wanted to. Sorry. We were on a roll. Okay, let's try that. So this.
You had to do it differently for staff with 2 computers so that you could.
Slides on my plate over here, so all they see is the slides.
Yeah, let's try that.
Picking up from the overhead mic.
so close to being done.
We have 2 more slides. We have 2 more slides. We have 2 more slides.
It's the kids, you know?
Can you just tell us what's in the last? As fun as this is?
Well, except for right now, we can't even tell you.
This is funny.
We're in a
Trying
galaxy.
really hard not to like sing or something.
Oh, come on, let's sing. Nope.
We can do a round.
We could do the song that doesn't end.
How about a repeat after me song? I know a bunch of Girl Scout ones. There you go.
Just talking to someone about that.
So go on air team. Sit right where you're at.
Let's try.
So this person was emphasizing this idea that learning happens after you build community and relationship, which, as you saw at the beginning of the presentation, is something we're going to really focus on this year, right? So then we talked about relationships really are formed when people feel valued and that they understand they matter. And there's lots of ways that can happen in and outside the classroom. So we have some opportunities for students to share their voice around this. That's not it.
I'll see. And the time that I felt important was helping people find their way around school when I was younger.
I'd say a time I felt like I was important was probably this meeting, because I don't really do much. So feeling like I was specifically being reached out to out of all the people that could have been felt really important to me, and like I was doing something really important. And a time that I felt where I mattered in my community, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. I think teachers are very helpful in making students feel like they matter. So every time I go to school, I feel like the teachers genuinely care about not only like the education that they're giving, but also like helping to outside of school.
Time I felt mattered. Probably whenever I needed help with something, I always felt that I couldn't ask anybody, but someone would just come up to me and say, "Hey, do you want some help?" And it helped me so much.
Probably when I have felt like important to my community is whenever I help out with like youth activities, if it's with high school or like my dance program or anything, just when I help out the younger kids and like help them find what they want to do and stuff.
So the general theme across a lot of the student conversations is that they want to have opportunities to contribute to the community in meaningful ways. They have a lot to offer. They like to help others. They just may need support in finding those avenues. They want to be noticed for who they are. They want to feel connected to another person, and they want us to know that they have something important to say and that we need to create space for that. So our staff spent a few minutes really processing that and thinking that through, like, what does that mean? What does that mean for my work coming up? What does that mean for the communities I'm developing and cultivating in the next, few months? And then we kind of reminded staff that it doesn't end there, that we're continuing this long-term vision and plan for our districts so that all of our stakeholders can come together and support one another in moving towards this end. So reminding all of us that we did listen to lots of different people in our community, high school students, educators and administrators of all roles across this district, community members across all 4 communities, and family or parents, guardians, all contributed to this wealth and bank of audio stories. And after careful analysis of 4 themes careful analysis by our outside facilitated group, the 4 themes that emerged from the sessions are these. We shared these with you last spring, I think, briefly, or August, sometime recently. And so what we'd like to do is build action plans across these 4 themes. And to do that, we need to continue to go back into the bank of audio recordings and really make sure we understand what was important to people, and continue to read the report we got and learn, prioritize opportunities and action steps related to those 4 themes, and then draft an action plan for each of the themes, share and review, share the drafts as they are developed with those who contributed to the learning sessions and others. We can make it more available, but especially to those who contributed to the learning sessions across all 4 stakeholder groups, so that they can offer feedback. Like, when we were saying this, our group really intended this, or we feel like this looks really great, but we're kind of wondering about this missing element. Because it's more authentic if we're willing to refine our plans with continuous input from those who helped us draft these themes and develop these themes. So we'll then revise based on that feedback and then bring it back to the board for kind of a final review and approval, or go back for continuous drafting and bring it back again to you. So the process is not going to be quick, but we anticipate it'll be thorough and inclusive. And I think if we want a long-term plan, that it's in our best interest to do that. For example, the first part of the plan is actually before we get to the 4 themes, and that's really that what is meaningful to all of our stakeholder groups, what's our purpose and vision for schooling, where are our shared values, and how do we want to have that good life? What do we want that to look like across these 4 communities, and how will the schools contribute to that? And so our administrative team spent some time really looking at the report, listening to the stories just on that section, and drafted 3 very different kind of visuals and what we call an elevator speech, or like almost like the mission statement, the short conversation and what it means to be part of these 4 communities in this school system. We know they need some work. We gave each other some feedback. We'd like to get to a place where we can then share those drafts out with the broader community and say, this is very drafty, but here's a representation of the stories, and give us some feedback. From the feedback, we can make a much more polished story to share, and then we could bring that to, for you to review. And then we'll move into each of the 4 action plans against each of the 4 themes and continue that cycle. So it will follow the same thing: define whatever the theme is, secure feedback, revise the theme, continue to bring it up in here. Now, a lot of you were members of the listening session, so you would actually also gain some action or feedback, be able to offer feedback in that feedback loop, and then again as a community, as a board, as a unit. So they'll have a couple opportunities. How does that sound? Sound okay? You can support it. We didn't want to move forward without talking this through with you and making sure that it makes sense.
So a couple of slides back, there were 4 things.
Yeah.
No.
Number 4, I'm hoping what that means is educators' sustainability, meaning they'll stay here because it's so wonderful to be here.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting theme to get into because it includes administration, their roles at all levels. It includes teachers, it includes ed techs, it includes all the different roles, and what does the job entail, and how can we manage it? There's outside forces like continuation of an addition of laws, which are sometimes really critical, without the removal of antiquated laws, which makes our job really challenging sometimes. So some of that we can't really, like, it's outside of our sphere of influence. So within our sphere of influence, how can we ensure this is the district you want to work in
Right.
and you want to stay in?
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to circle back to that because that stuck out to me. And you're right about the laws and the rules that change. So we need to be aware of that as well, so that we can make.
Yeah, Angela, I always applaud your ability to gather information. I started before the board when we did the start late sessions, remember, with sticky notes. And having done project management most of my career, you've got to have that roadmap to keep people sort of on track. So I think you've defined it well to keep the theme going and get the feedback and so forth, so. Yeah.
Thanks, and really honestly, that iterative loop came out of a really thoughtful conversation with the entire administrative team and was really grounded there. And we just actually talked again today about, like, I had some logistical questions, like, how do you feel about doing it this way or this way, just because I want to make sure it feels efficient and isn't overwhelming.
Yeah.
Just part of what I'm worried about.
I know, like, the idea of everyone offering feedback is also scary and can give you tons of feedback, right? So it's interesting, especially public feedback. In my world right now, work, it's happening with all the federal programs and so forth, so. But as long as it's there, it's available, so.
And I think when we do the feedback, some people just won't be interested, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I do think we're gonna have to do a little bit of a Likert scale, like 1 to 5,
Yeah.
how does this feel for you? And then some qualitative commentary.
Right,
So otherwise it would be too hard to sort through.
totally, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, agreed. Thank you for that, and the administration, yeah.
So
I know you're saying this will take some time. What is your anticipated goal, like this year?
So if I had my rose-colored glasses on, which I'll put on, I would love for this process to be complete, and that's the timeline part I haven't quite figured out with the team, really, but before we set the budget, right? Because some of these priorities will help all of us, including your roles, inform our budgetary decisions. And it's inclusive of so many stakeholders that it feels like it's not just, hopefully people would recognize it's not just administrators sitting in a room trying to make tough decisions, but that those decisions that are being made are based on broad input and direction of where we want to head. That's a really big ask, because as soon as we hit budget season, which is well before, we get to the big public part of the budget, the big meetings, it's always live streamed and available. That part's always transparent, but it's hard, it's competing priorities, right? So
3 months, right?
yeah, so ideally, we'd have a good portion of this done, probably but before January. But knowing how long it took us last year to actually do what we had hoped to do, I will also say it would be great if we could have a plan before the end of the school year for the years ahead. But if we could at least have some gauge of where these priorities, at least drafts of how these priorities might take shape before the budget season, then we'll be on track. That's it.
Well, that makes sense.
Good response, good question.
Any other questions? So we're just shepherding your work, right? This is really your work. It's something that becomes our work on the daily, but making sure that it's representative of all 4 communities. So thank you. Hopefully this was comprehensive enough for you, and we'll be in touch.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome.
More echoes.
Thank goodness. They were fun for a minute. Let's see. Proposal to create, thank you, Angela. Proposal to create a new special ed tech position.
Yes. So we had a student return to school from an out-of-district placement. In order to allow that student to be here successfully at the present time, that student requires an ed tech. So because it's a new position, I need to bring it to you for approval, understanding that the savings from having the student leave an out-of-district placement will cover the cost. And we're hoping that the position may not be needed permanently. So once the student no longer needs the support of the ed tech, the position will be eliminated, okay? But I do officially need your approval because it's a new position.
Is the position essentially already filled?
Yes, I think she filled it. She had to shift someone, but we had to have someone.
Right, I'm just,
Yeah,
in our conversations tonight, we've already had vacancies in this, so.
but I think she had to shift for this particular position.
So we're doing the domino.
Yes, that's all we do these
That's
days.
fine. So motion?
So I would move, yeah, that we create this position.
Oh, go ahead. Motion from you, second from Jim. Questions and conversation.
Sorry, and then I would
That's
wonder
fine.
how do we see the savings? Where do we see the savings? The out-of-district placement is X.
Correct.
By bringing the student back with the one-on-one or the support,
There's a savings.
there's a savings. When will how will we see that?
Well, we would have budgeted, again,
Yeah.
all of the out-of-district placements are around 100,000. So you will see that we will not be spending the entire 100,000,
Okay,
right?
Right, that
We'll just spend a portion of it.
makes sense to me.
Other questions? Jim?
We have 4 new out-of-district placements coming into the district. Are any of those candidates for a special ed tech to be with them?
Not that I've been told.
Okay. I almost think this is gonna should be a permanent position. In all honesty, I just think it's going to be the new norm.
It may very well, but I'm relaying the information to you that came from the special ed director.
One step at a time, I think, yeah.
And we need to create a position, not shift a current position, because we would need to create that position.
Correct. Had all of the other positions been filled, we would have needed to create a position for, it's specific for this one student. Make
So
sense?
there's a list, a column over here of unfilled positions, and then there's here this one needed. So we borrowed Peter to pay Paul, but Peter still needs to be,
Right.
Peter's still borrowed. Peter's, yep, yeah, and they're keeping track.
But will this be a position that we'll need to hire should it no longer be needed?
Should it no longer be needed, no, we will eliminate the position.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Thank you.
Okay. Motion carries, and
We've already done,
I think we're all done.
do you have an update?
Well, I want to have an update. I went to Utah, as everyone knows, for a National School Board conference in like 3 weeks ago. And I've been trying to get some information so I could present it. So I would like for that probably, hopefully in October, to be my board report. And I think some of it will be interesting with what Angela was just talking about with anxiety and depression, and student mental health was a lot of what we talked about. And and I don't want to say too much without having the information, but there's access to 100% free mental health 365 days a year by just we could put a badge on our website and a student could tap on that and they could talk with a therapist like then. Because the average time to get in to see somebody can be 11 months. And most people who need to talk about whatever's crushing them is now, and it's immediate. So I've been trying to get that information, and the person is out, the person that sends that information. So luckily I don't need to push the button, but I'd like to bring that to you all so that we can have that information, because it's critical to what we're
Is this a
talking about.
national program?
Yes, and it was a presenter. We saw an hour and 45-minute presentation from this individual about student mental health. It was very powerful. I don't know if you all saw the little red bracelet that I handed a student the other day, and it said, "My life is worth living." It's part of that program. There's a website, mylifeisworthliving.org, but there's just more to it than that. So I will have a presentation. I just need to get the information. I work best in a box. Yeah, I need structure.
Suicide Prevention Month, by the way.
Pardon me?
Suicide Prevention Month, September.
Yeah, and it was really good. I can't, good is not even the right word, but just very, right for the time. Oh, yes.
Scheduling question. So our regular school board meeting is being moved to October 12th.
Yes.
Is our policy meeting being moved to October 12th?
Good question.
Providing that that I can find some time to dedicate to policy.
Oh, I see.
Policy
Okay.
review. Yes, our meeting would be moved to the 12th.
And we will send some nagging group texts and emails just so that everyone remembers that it's the 12th.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't gonna have policy in conflict.
Right on one and then
No.
we can't do that. That's too messy.
And we missed the presentation.
And we
Right.
messed the presentation, right, so, yeah. So we'll just be overly communicative because we're sort of off schedule, so. This is taxing for us to have to do this. Anything else, everyone? Then we're adjourned.
Great, thank you.
At 7:47.
That is incredible.
We're
Good job, everyone.